I'm always how things tend to line up randomly at these. You did introduce your last poem with a lot of references to history and music and all that, and that's where I'm at with this first song. 4th of July coming up, and our country's birthday, and I thought I'd do a song that relates to a chapter in our country's musical history of the United States. And this is long before things like rock and roll, disco, or Bob Dylan in the 60s, and even before jazz, and before the Charleston, and before a thing called radio even. Early 1890s. At which time all the countries in Europe, it seemed, had this movement going where they were developing their own national sound of classical music, which would be identified with their folk music and their history and their legends. And everybody had one: the Germans, the French, the Italians, the Czechs, the Russians, even the English. Distinctive sounds that were immediately identifiable with the specific countries. So people over here felt like we better get on board a little bit. We had nothing with that sort of thing with classical music in 1890. And so some wealthy people out on the East Coast, they established a conservatory, National Music, in New York City. And with the specific intent of having students come there to become classical musicians and to compose with the goal of developing an American sound of classical music. One little glitch came in. That we didn't have anybody over here that was an established classical composer to kind of lead us. So we called over to the old country, to old Bohemia, Prague, what is modern Czechoslovakia. And we asked this gentleman, he was one of the greatest living composers in the world at the time, if he would come over here. We would pay him to teach at our conservatory and to compose while he was here in order to achieve that goal, help us achieve that goal of establishing an American classical musical sound. Well, and one of the things they did to try to help him out, to get him in the right frame of mind, was during the summers he was here, and they took him from the East Coast in a train ride to Iowa, where there was a Czech community there, where he could be among people of his own country and speak his language, and they thought that would help free his mind up. So he was over there, not too far, on the other side of the Mississippi River. And a year or two go by, and he says, yes, you can have, I think I've got it for you. You can have your own national American sound of classical music. And I think you need to draw upon two sources to do it. And they were happy at first until he told them, some of the people, these wealthy folks out east, were not so thrilled with what he told them those two sources were. Because one of them was to draw upon the music of a people who had been enslaved for over 2 centuries and only a generation or so earlier had finally been emancipated. The other group had almost from the get-go been displaced from their homelands and pushed aside, and in the process virtually annihilated and massacred many times. But he persisted. And to prove his point, he composed a symphony that drew upon African American melodies and rhythms and Native American rhythms and melodies. He blended them together into a symphony. Well, I don't know if they used the expression back then in the 1890s, but that symphony was a smash worldwide. He proved his point. He went home after a couple of years, back to old Bohemia, and the money ran out, as I understand it. They couldn't pay him, so. And the conservatory kind of limped along for a while. Never really got off the ground the way we wished it had. But that symphony he wrote, that remains today one of the most popular, most performed, one of the most beloved pieces of classical music ever written by anybody, ever. So I wrote this song thinking I wonder what it was like for him to come over from the old country to try to help us, kind of rough-hewn culture at the time, find our musical soul. And this song is called About America. I got a letter from New York, across the ocean wide. There's a job, it waits for me over on the other side. It seems the folks in America, they want to find their national voice. They look this old world over and I'm the logical choice. Still I just can't understand why they asked for me. I made my name, my claim to fame. I play bohemian melody. I can't deny that deep inside, gypsy rhythms, they run in me. I can write a tune or a dance for you. I can write you a symphony. But all I know about America is what I hear and read. There once were slaves in America. Now those slaves have been set free. There's still a lot of Indians, not as many as before. I'll give this country what it asked me for. They took me out to Iowa to make me feel at home. Well, 1890 in Iowa, you leave a man and his thoughts alone. I had the chance, a lot of time, to keep my job in mind. Began to feel a world away from the one I had left behind. Began to learn about America by what I hear and see. There once were slaves in America. Now those slaves have been set free. There's still a lot of Indians, not as many as before. I'll give this country what it asks me for. And I hear swing low, sweet chariot, you're coming for to carry me home. And in the quiet of a prairie night, I hear Hiawatha's song. The time is near. New world, lend your ear. But remember, as you're listening, this is why I'm here. To write the song of America by what I hear and feel. The song of slaves set free. They want that freedom to be real. And still the song of the Indian, and it echoes. Sure. shore to shore. I gave this country, I gave this country, I gave this country what it asked me for. Thank you. So that took a little bit of time, so I'm going to do a quick song here. No story behind this, no history. This is just called Count. Count your blessings, number your days. How do I love you? Let me count the ways. The number of needles in a stack of hay. The number of pennies you save or the dollars you pay. The number of stars that shine above. The number of times you will fall in love. Count your blessings, number your days. How do I love you? Let me count the way. The number of teardrops you will cry every time you will hate to say goodbye. The number of mornings you'll greet the sun. The number of nights you'll kneel, you'll pray, thy will be done. Whoa. Count your blessings, number your days. How do I love you? Let me count the way. Okay, thank you, everybody.